Hey everybody, this is Robert with RC Archery, and today I've got 5 tips to help you have a dynamic shot. Alright, so I know you hear me talk about it a lot, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth today on what a dynamic shot is. So all this is going to be more high level and just kind of an overview of it all. It's in depth and it's all step-by-step processed out in an instructional video that I have currently. I'm going to put a link for that down in the description below, that way you can check it out. It's in DVD form. It's also on my Vimeo page as well. It's how to shrink your groups and raise your averages. So just kind of give an overview, 5 steps on it. The first one is going to be an important one. It's how you set up your body. So this is going to be on the form and the bow fitment, but it's also going to be what you do specifically with your shoulders. Having a dynamic shot is just putting a direction on your shot. So it's putting a little bit of movement in it, it's putting a little bit of energy into the shot, and it's having everything kind of work together on a timing process. But basically with the shoulders, what you want to do on the front one is to have it low and have it out and have it extended. And you don't need it overextended, and in fact a little bit kind of pressed back into is good. What it does is it adds some stability through the muscles that are going to be around the shoulder joint, around the socket right there. And you'll notice that everything just kind of stacks and is in a straight line. When your shoulder, especially your bow shoulder, is above your hip, you're going to be able to use that straight line throughout your core, your side muscles, and all that's going to work together, and it's going to help you hold that bow arm up. So that's going to be an important one. The second part of that is going to be on your release side shoulder. And you want all this to be in a flat, level plane as possible. So whenever you go to pull through that shot, everything kind of works together. You don't have a really high elbow and a high shoulder up here, because then you're going to be fighting and pushing down. So what you want to do when you draw back is you want to be able to release the muscle and release the tension that's all in here and drive it back into your back muscles here. So whenever you draw, you kind of overextend and exaggerate it and bring that elbow and that arm down, and that helps set these muscles in place. And then all you do at that point is you just hinge from that shoulder joint and bring everything back up for your anchor point and for your leverage point for your release arm. Alright, so step 2 is going to be creating a slow and steady push towards a target. Now this is one that I have a first-person view on my instructional video that I step-by-step talk you through what you're looking for. But basically the long and short of it is that once you get to full draw, you're pushing towards the target very slowly until you find your steadiest point in your sight picture. You're going to have a range in there where everything kind of steadies up more, and then if you go over that, then it's all going to break down. Now you want to be able to work that into your shot. Some people prefer to have just kind of a post for a front arm, and if you do that, then you're going to find that steadiest point, that balance point out there, and then you're just going to pull and work through your shot. The way that I do it is I kind of time everything together where I have a continuous expansion throughout my shot. So it's not a huge expansion, it's not a huge movement, and that's why it works together with that front arm being able to push towards the target and find that steadiest movement. So step number 3 is kind of where everything starts to tie together, and that's when you start to slowly pull through your shot. Now again, what I said earlier is I expand. So a lot of times when you say that word and when you talk about that, people kind of look at you funny. They don't really know what you're talking about. It's really hard to put into words what you're looking for, but the best way I know to describe it is to talk about just how you would feel without the bow and just hold your arms up. So basically, if you hold your arms like this and you start to push your chest out and pull your shoulders down, that's basically the same movement as what you're going to have on that expansion. As you pull through that shot, you're kind of pushing the chest out, and what that does, it drops these shoulders down. But when you're dropping that shoulder down, what it's doing is elongating that joint. So your bow shoulder and your release side are elongating. That's that push towards the target we talk about, and that slow pull through the target. Best example that I've heard to kind of paint a visual in there, I actually heard on the Easton Target podcast. It was Steve Anderson talking about it, that he had gotten from another archer throughout his time, and it was basically like pulling a string from the target with your release hand, and you're slowly trying to pull that string straight back from the target towards you. I really like that example because it really paints a picture on what you want to do. And to kind of take that a step further, a lot of people have some dips and they have bobs in their sight picture, and that was something I went on my Instagram post and I kind of talked about, in that slow steady movement of my elbow going down throughout my shot. And the reason you want to look at that and why I like that string analogy is that if you're pulling that string away from the target, you want it to stay taut. You want to have that tension on there. You don't want it to have slack. It's just like if you're fishing, when you catch a fish and you hook that fish, if you let that line go slack, that hook has a good chance of coming back out of that fish. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep that tension on there. So as you're pulling, that holds that tension, and then when you go down, you're reeling. So you're always keeping that tension on there. It's the same thing when we're doing our shot. Once we give that a green light to say, okay, this shot is good, this is what I'm going to take, everything is in place, and we start our execution, and we start that expansion, we start that pull, it never stops. You have to trust in the form that you've built, and you have to trust in your shot timing, and it just has to go at that point. So it's just one steady fluid motion no matter what you see on target, and it's just going through, and you go all the way through and you don't quit. You've got to have it all the way going into your follow through. Alright, so I mentioned follow through there. That's going to be step number 4. That's what we're going to look at on this tip. A lot of people, they don't think anything about a follow through. It's just there. Either they quit on the shot and they don't have one, or they have a follow through and they don't pay attention to it. But that's a really big important part of our shot, and it lets us actually learn from what happened. You can hold that follow through for just an instant right after it happens and just kind of study where your body goes. And you can actually see if you made a mistake on the shot or if something feels different and what happened. You can start to diagnose everything. Another part of that is don't quit on the shot. You don't want to just snap a shot or punch a shot or do anything like that. You want that steady continual expansion, and you want that to keep going throughout your follow through. So my release arm, I create a direction for it with my hand, and when I'm pulling and expanding, I want to be able to pull with my release hand to come to my shoulder. I want it to be in this area to where when I get through with my full expansion, my full follow through, that it's right here and I can reach down and I can touch the top of my shoulder if I want to. And a lot of times I do that, and I've just built that into a routine that I have, because I know that if I come out and my hand's here and I reach down and I can't touch my shoulder, I pop my hand away from my face. So that's something really big to look at. Same thing with your bow hand. Whenever you get through with the shot and it comes out, did it go way over here? Was it over here? Did it drop right away? Did it raise right away? That's going to tell you what you're doing the moment before the shot happens, and that's going to help you diagnose what you're doing. So let's say if you're dropping your bow arm throughout the shot and losing all this tension, you're seeing a lot of bobs on target, and as soon as you make that shot happen, you see that arm just drop like a rock. Well, that's because your muscles aren't engaged. You're not holding that arm up. And the same thing if you push it left, right, or up. You're pushing that direction right before the shot happens. So that'll help you be able to know what you're doing and help self-diagnose the issues and the problems that are going on. Alright guys, so tip number 5 is going to be around our release aids. So when I first started hearing this, it kind of made me laugh, and it sounds kind of counterintuitive, and a lot of people look at you funny when you say this, but it works, and I'll explain why. If you're pulling through your shot and you're being dynamic and you know you're moving, you know you're not collapsing and that front shoulder's not raising up and you're not having anything weird going, and you're having problems with the shot firing, a lot of times what that means is that if you have a hinge release that's set too fast, or if you use a thumb or an index finger release, then that means the trigger is set too light. Now, what you need to do with that, like I said, sounds counterintuitive. You need to slow the release down. Now, a lot of people say, well, no, I'm having problems getting the shot to fire. I need to speed it up. But specifically with a hinge, we'll talk about that first, that works counterintuitively. It works backwards. If you have a hinge rotated like this and you have to rotate it this direction, you have to load these outside fingers to get it to fire. If you're having problems pulling through that shot and it's not firing, it's because you have too much weight on this index finger and you're not allowing it to rotate and move. So by slowing that release down to where you can kind of break towards that balance point and put more weight on these outside fingers and pull from those outside fingers, that's what's going to create the rotation of the hinge. That's what's going to break that shot. Now if you have a thumb release, what you'll look at, or an index release, is setting the trigger heavier. Now why would you want to do that? Well, you need to have some preloaded tension on that trigger. So if it's your thumb, you need to be able to press that thumb into it a little bit before you start your shot. Or if it's an index trigger, you need to be able to wrap that index around the trigger and put a little bit of tension, a little bit of pressure on it. And what that's going to do is when you start to pull through that shot, that tension is already focused on that trigger, so it'll maintain and it'll increase as you pull. So by setting it heavier, you can actually press that thumb down on the trigger without fear of it firing, or set that index on the release, on that trigger part of that release without fear of it firing, and just start to pull, and that tension, that pressure will increase on it, and that'll trip your shot. Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. As always, like, subscribe if you haven't, share it if you like what I'm talking about. That way more people can see it and can get that information out there. Follow me on my Instagram channel if you don't already. A lot of my information, what I put into my videos, goes on there first, and then I also have a tip series that I run there too That way that you can follow it and be able to see even more information. I'm going to take a shot here so you can see what I'm talking about for a dynamic shot, kind of break it down and let you look at some different views of it to be able to focus on what's going on.